There's something you actually care about that you haven't touched in 3 weeks. The next step isn't even hard. It's just boring. So you sit there, refreshing, scrolling, waiting for a push that never comes. And a voice you've heard your whole life says the same 3 words. Just push through. Here's what nobody told you. That voice is the reason you can't start. And it has nothing to do with willpower. You've been blaming your willpower. It was never willpower. It was chemistry. Let me take you under the hood, because once you see this, you can't unsee it. Your brain runs on a chemical called dopamine, and almost everyone gets it wrong. They think it's the pleasure chemical, the reward you feel when something good happens. It isn't. In 1997, three neuroscientists, Wolfram Schultz, Peter Dayan, and Reed Montague, published a study in the journal Science that rewrote the whole model. They watched dopamine neurons fire in real time, and the dopamine didn't spike when the reward arrived. It spiked before, in anticipation. Then, once the brain learned to predict the reward, the spike moved earlier still, onto the cue. A fully predicted reward fired almost nothing, close to zero. The spike came before, never after. Which means for a task you can fully predict, your motivation is near zero before you ever touch it. Read that again. Dopamine is the chemical of the chase, not the prize. The wanting, not the having. A psychologist named Kent Berridge spent decades proving exactly that split. Dopamine drives wanting, not liking. The pursuit, not the pleasure. Which means you can desperately want to start something and feel zero enjoyment doing it. Think of the email you've rewritten in your head 10 times and still haven't sent. The workout you fully intend to do, standing there in your gym clothes, not moving. The book half written, the photos you keep meaning to back up, the call you owe someone you love. You want all of it. You'd feel good once it's done. Your body just won't release the fuel to begin, because the boring task starves you. There's nothing new to anticipate. Your brain looks at the predictable next step and releases nothing. You sit there, knowing exactly what to do, physically unable to begin. And then you blame yourself for it, which somehow makes the tank even emptier. And here's where it gets bigger than your to-do list. In 2007, neuroscientist Bianca Wittmann scanned the brains of 15 adults and found something almost no one talks about. The reward system fires for novelty the same way it fires for reward. The new thing is the reward. Just anticipating something new lights up the same circuit. So when a task is fresh, the dopamine floods in and you'll work for 12 hours without eating. When it's familiar, the tank runs dry. So everyone has this dial. The chemical that says go fires for what's new and goes quiet for what's repeated. That's not a flaw in some people. That's the operating system in all of us. But some brains have that dial turned far past yours. And studying the extreme version is how we finally see the rule. In the Journal of the American Medical Association, Dr. Nora Folkow scanned over 50 unmedicated ADHD brains against matched controls. The ADHD brains had measurably lower dopamine markers in the reward pathway. And the lower the markers ran, the weaker the person's attention and their drive. The chemistry tracked the symptom. They're not unmotivated, they're underfueled. And so, sometimes are you. Pool the brain scans across studies in a 2014 review by Plichter and Sheris, and the twist holds. The so-called distractible brain isn't missing a reward system. It's the identical system, just tuned to demand more new before it'll fire. And here's the line that should stop you. Take the exact same spot in the brain, the reward anticipation hub. In a normal brain, the more impulsive and distractible you are, the more it lights up while you wait. In the so-called broken brain, that same spot goes darker the longer it waits. Same wire, opposite current. The distractible brain isn't missing a reward system. It's the identical system, just tuned to demand more new before it'll fire. This is the reveal. The people we call lazy, scattered, flaky are not broken. The psychiatrist William Dodson calls it an interest-based nervous system. It won't engage because something is important. It engages when something is interesting, new, urgent, or a challenge. And once you see that, you stop trying to fix the engine. You start feeding it what it actually burns. So here's the fix, and it's the counterintuitive part. The move isn't doing less of what your brain wants, it's deliberately handing the novelty somewhere to go. Start with the exact thing you open this on. That task you haven't touched in 3 weeks. Don't try to grind it cold. Pair it with something new in the same sitting. A timer you raise, a new spot to do it, a coffee shop instead of your desk, music you've never worked to. The very next step, broken off so small it's almost a different task. You're not forcing the boring thing. You're handing your brain something new to chase while the boring thing rides along. That's the whole move at the smallest scale. Then, only then, scale it up. The second thing becomes a second project, a second goal, a second lane that's genuinely yours. The moment you stall on lane A, because it went boring and the fuel is gone, you don't sit frozen for 3 weeks. There's a lane B sitting right there, a fresh problem, a new hit of novelty. So you swing to B and you work, because B is interesting right now. When B goes quiet, you swing back to A or over to C. The work you avoided on Monday gets easy on Thursday, because by Thursday it's the new one again. The procrastination doesn't disappear. You just give it somewhere productive to go. They call it scattered. It isn't scattered, it's diversified. And the most extreme version of this brain, the entrepreneur, already does this without knowing why. And the data backs it. In a study across a Swedish twin registry and a Dutch sample, more than 20,000 people combined, Verhoeven and her colleagues found hyperactivity traits reliably linked to actually being self-employed. And in 2026, a meta-analysis by Tran and Wiklund pooling 47 studies pinned the exact split. Hyperactivity and impulsivity drive you to start things. Inattention quietly wrecks the boring follow-through. There's a tell in the data. When this brain gets pulled off the boring busy work by force, sickness, a crisis, a hard deadline elsewhere, the main thing often doesn't stall. It grows. Because the energy that used to leak into low-value tinkering had nowhere to go but the work that mattered. 20,000 people and 47 studies aren't one person's story. They're the rule. But this is exactly where it turns from a system into chaos. So here's the ceiling, and it's the most important rule. Maximum 3 lanes. Want a fourth? You give one up. Any brain like ours can start. The discipline is stopping at 3 because past 3 none of them grow. That's exactly what the data warns about. Inattention is the drag on follow-through, and the more places you've scattered yourself, the more places there are to freeze. 3 lanes give the novelty somewhere to land. 6 just give it more ways to leak. So go back to that thing you can't start. You were never lazy. You were never broken. You were handed a rulebook written for a brain that runs on importance and yours runs on new. The idea you keep getting pulled toward isn't the thing distracting you from the work. It is the work knocking. Remember what the scans showed. For anything fully predictable, the fuel reads near zero before you start. You were never out of willpower. You were out of new. The moment you stop trying to be the single-track person you were told to be and start feeding your brain what it was built to burn, you stop being the person who can't start anything and become the person who finally moves on the things they actually care about. And that one shift is the difference between another 3 weeks of staring and finally starting.